How we doing, mates? Welcome back to The Top Step. My name is Rowland-Smith. Awesome episode. I'm actually recording the same day I'm going to put this out. I'm going to work hard to try and get this thing out. I was a little bit behind last week. Baseball started back, so I had a lot going on. I'm doing that and a lot of other things I'm trying to get done in my week. And I got the two tin lids, the kids downstairs. So I'm trying to put it all together. But I'm going to put this episode at the same day because my next guest, who I'm about to get to in a second, and I talk about a few things that happened today around Major League Baseball. So with no further ado, my next guest, this was an awesome conversation. Dave Sims, the play-by-play announcer on TV for the Seattle Mariners, and I spent a rock solid session talking about a bunch of stuff. Sometimes you forget, if you're a Mariners fan, he's been here for 14 years. And by the way, I kind of screwed up the math too, because his first year was my first year as a player, 2007. I remember him coming into the locker room. He was this guy just bursting in with energy. I'm a young player. And he was going around the locker room trying to get to know everyone. Obviously, he'd done his research. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, how you doing, young man? My name's Dave Sims. I'm the play-by-play announcer." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, hold on, the play-by-play announcer wants to talk to me? But this guy was just so – Dave Sims was just so locked in because he was trying to do the rounds and everything else. But that's where I first met him. I remember it like it was yesterday. So here I am as a player. Now I'm done playing. I'm back on the broadcasting side. And I remember going back 2015, back to Seattle to sit down and meet with my now boss, John Bradford, over at Root Sports and hang out with Kevin Martinez, who really gave me this big opportunity, him and Randy Adamak. I owe them a lot. But I walk into back then Safeco Field. I walk in, and they said, "Oh yeah, come up to the radio booth and come up to the TV booth." And it's before the game, and there's Dave, and I'm a little bit apprehensive. I mean, I hadn't been there for years, right? Like I'd been on with other teams. I'm like, are these people going to remember me? You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing here? Basically, I was extremely nervous. Put it that way. I walk in, and Dave comes right up to me. He says, "Hey, it's good to see you. How you been?" And like we seen each other a week ago, and it just gave me a comfort level to the point where basically, that same, literally in 20 minutes, I jump on the radio. They said, "Oh, throw the headphones on." Boom. I jump on the radio and start giving a breakdown. I had no idea what I was doing. But, Dave's like, "Oh, can we get a photo?" It was just that feeling of comfort, which helped me out. So I owe Dave a lot for welcoming me back that way. But we have a great conversation, man. What a crazy time. 2020, we've got this 60-game season we're dealing with. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, which obviously, Dave being one of the only African-American broadcasters in baseball, it hit him pretty hard. So we talk about that. We talk about the fact there's only 7% of Major League rosters made up from black players. Why that is, he has an amazing scope on why he thinks that is. It's interesting. We talk about his days in New York on TV and radio, the biggest sports market in the country, really. Tackling that from being a young guy and going to New York, starting with the New York Daily News and diving into that. And now he's time with the Mariners. But we cover a lot, man. It was a lot of fun. It was good. And one of the biggest things I take away from Dave and being a young broadcaster, trying to still learn from the best. One thing he said to me, and we discussed this, is get down to the clubhouse. I have the credentials. Get down and get to know these players. And again, I was a little standoffish when I started because, and believe it or not, if you're listening to this, you're like, "Oh, there's no way I would worry about going down and talking to current players." But there was that, that feeling of, I don't want to be annoying or I don't want to get in these guys' way. Because I remember when I was a player, and even though I was great I love the guys from the media. I mean, I had it good in Seattle. If you play on the East Coast, it might be a little bit different. But I went down, and the one thing he pushed me into doing, and he told me this over and over, was get down the clubhouse, get to know these players, hear it from them. So when you're on air, you can say, "Well, Marco Gonzalez mentioned before the game that blah, 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 blah." And it just gives you that credibility because it's coming from the source. And that's really what you need to do. But more so, whether you walk away from, when you step away from broadcasting, I've taken that into everything I do. So if I'm meeting new people, I'm meeting them, I'm hearing their name, I'm trying to get to know their story and everything else. It just makes life a lot easier. whether it's in a corporate situation, a coaching situation with Next Gen Baseball back in Australia, whatever it may be. Just getting on those comfortable terms with the person I'm hanging out with. That's my advice, I guess, if you want to get into broadcasting and you just want to hang out. Anyway, but been a big week last week. Baseball started back. I don't know how we're feeling about the no fans. I'm slowly getting used to it. But I've had a good couple of weeks. It's warming up here in Seattle. It's a really hot day today. It's about 90 degrees. Got a boxing session in Emerald City Boxing. I appreciate all the comments on the email from straight through my website, www.thetopstep.com. People have written to me, asked me about the boxing. No, I'm not training for a fight. Absolutely not. I would get my ass kicked if I stepped in the ring. I'll tell you that right now. I have got no business boxing for real, amateur, whatever. No chance. Number one. Number two, I just love boxing, man. It's the best workout. It's just such a good stress reliever and everything else. I get up in the morning, and what I'm going to set up to at Emerald City, if Russ and Chloe are cool with this, I want to set up group where I set up, I can, take reservations, get a group of whatever once this COVID thing chills out. And we can do a workout together for free. Come in, try it out, try boxing out. If you've never done it or you have done it, come. These guys are awesome. I'm having so much fun. I can't get enough of it. Okay, a couple more little plugs. Make sure you go to www.thetopstep.com. Send me a message. Send me some feedback. If you're listening to this on Apple or Google Play, leave me a review, man. It helps. Leave a review to this podcast. I'm trying to get this thing going. Got some amazing guests. I'm trying to inspire, tell these inspiring stories. Dave is another one of these. Go on YouTube. I'm going to put all these up on YouTube. I've been lazy the last couple of weeks. I will get them up. Okay, enough of me. Let's get to the man, Dave Sims. Let's hear his story. And let's go Mariners. I'm back covering the Mariners. I'm so stoked. All right, guys. Enjoy this episode as Dave Sims joins me on the Top Step. We'll see ya.
No matter what happens, Rowland-Smith has something to tell his grandkids right here. First appearance of the big leagues. Face a Hall of Famer. Especially if he strikes them out.
Here comes the 1-2 pitch to Junior now. The breaking ball. He struck him out. Yeah, that will be a story for the rest of his life as he strikes out Ken Griffey Jr. and the inning is over. What a career it was.
You'll never say that I'm not killing them.
All right, Dave, welcome to the podcast, mate. I've wanted to get you on here for a while, but I'm glad I did today because you're approaching about the week mark. I've been dying to ask, has this felt normal yet, doing play-by-play remotely with no fans? Is it feeling normal at all?
Well, it's normal looking at the monitors, but then I look at, I'm used to looking at the monitors and looking out at the field, and I'm looking for relievers coming in from the pen. I'm looking for, just looking to see who's interacting with who. Yeah, that's totally different. So the focus is on the monitors, and we have a great setup. I mean, it looks like Star Trek. I've got a monitor down to the truck where they can put the promos and reads on, and then I've got the big monitor with like the 9 cam, so you can see. Yeah. Well, I can see everything that's coming out of the ballpark. Then I've got the on air. Then I've got the studio. And I've got the monitor for Mike and I, so we can see each other and interact.
Okay.
Plus, I got my laptop, so I've got a lot of things in front of me, man. It looks like a big control panel.
When they were going through the options, what were some of the options? I mean, they would have said, "Hey, we're going to try this or try that," right? Or was it just straight, "This is how we're doing it"?
Well, what I heard coming out of the box, they said there was no way we're going to travel announcers and whatnot. So, the home games are not a problem because we can do them right out of the booth. Or, we could have done them out of the studio. I think the Yes Network was doing some stuff out of their studio up in Greenwich, Connecticut. And now I think they're strictly in the stadium. At least that was the last I heard. But yeah, I knew we weren't going on the road, so that eased it a little bit for me. I mean, I felt for the players, but I knew, I said, hey, at least I'm not going to be putting that. We're in enough jeopardy at home,
right?
Without having to go on planes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and going back, I mean, because you're in New York, right? In New York City, you're right in the epicenter when all this was really getting heavy, and really no one really knew what the future held for anything as far as how long this is going to. Did you? I mean, go back to April. Were you thinking there is no way they're going to play this baseball season?
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, we got back March 13th. We got out of Arizona, and I got that. So that was a Friday night, and I stayed in all doors that Saturday, and then I said, "Oh heck, let me go for a walk." So I went for a walk Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then I stayed 44 days consecutively in the house. I didn't think it was going to be able to get done. I really didn't. There's just too many variables, but we're making a go of it, and I'm happy to be a part of it. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to address what happened today. The Marlins came out. I think it was 13 players and staff members.
A significant number of players and coaches. Yeah.
Game is canceled. Is there any thought in the back of your mind thinking about when Manfred basically has the power to say, "All right, we're done. This is crazy." Is there any? Because I woke up to, I was like, "Oh, here we go."
I hear you. I don't think he's going to shut it down. I mean, it's going to have to get really bad. I mean, that's why we have all the extra guys, on the roster available. And I think it's just going to be, next man up. And because, as you know, as a baseball player, it's so different from basketball. I mean, basketball, you got a shot. If you shut it down for a week, then you can come back. I mean, the jump shot's not going to be that messed up. But pitchers, you guys would catch all kinds of abuse if you're shut down for a week. So I think it's just going to be, hey, man, that's why we have expanded rosters, and we're going to take it as far as they can.
Yeah. Do you think this is the best way to do it, the way they're doing it? I mean, you mentioned the NBA, and they're doing this thing. Obviously, it's not that simple to just go, "Oh, we've got this facility," and just have roll out, every game in the bubble like they've got in the NBA. Do you feel like this is the best way they could have handled this with MLB?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if there was a bubble situation, I saw a friend of mine on social media said, "Listen, the New York area has knocked the curve down to almost totally flat." So you've got Yankee Stadium, Citi Field. You've got ballparks in Brooklyn, Staten Island, in north central Jersey. You've got them up in southern Connecticut, and in the county, it was at Rockland County. So you could have had a bubble there. That was the first I had seen that. A friend of mine sent that last night. But they're making the best of it that they possibly can.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just being an ex-player and just watching, just witnessing with the union and with the owners about going back and forth. He's sitting there going, "Guys, just work together somehow, get this going." Because
that was
I'll be honest with you, 60 games. I was like, is this a serious thing? Like, are we really playing 60 games? And I've gotten used to it.
I thought it was going to be 80. 80 to 100, and it just seemed like it was unfathomable to me, given the labor history in baseball and recent too. That they could foul this up. And it got to the point where if you didn't have to spare, you had been awfully close to it because, we have a deal, then we don't have a deal, and that's 60 games, take it or leave it. Would I have preferred 80 games? Heck yeah, but this is better than nothing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And if you had to compare this to 94, obviously covering sport, being around, was that – and if you go back to, obviously now you look back, oh yeah, well there was a strike because they couldn't, you kind of just think of it as something that seems semi-normal. But when you go back when you were in it, you must have been thinking to yourself, are they seriously doing this right now?
94, I did a Braves at Mets game at Shea Stadium on ESPN. It was a B-Net network game, so it was going in, let's say it was blacked out in New York and Atlanta. So it's going out to the rest of the parts of the country. And it was with Jim Cotton. And it was a great experience working with Kitty. He was a tremendous guy. I'm sure you've met him along the way. And then, we wrap up the game. And, boys, that's it. We're on strike tomorrow. I was like, what? It was my second year with ESPN. I was rolling. I was, I thought I'd be there forever, doing baseball and everything. And that happened. And that really, I've sort of flushed that memory now for the most part. But I do remember being really angry and disappointed. Forgot about it. It was unbelievable.
So you felt like your career, like, well, what do I do now? Not what do I do now? Obviously, you're going to be in broadcasting. But so you're in a situation where you felt like, all right, I'm with ESPN. I'm finally making headway. I'm with the biggest network. And then out of your control, man, there must have been some resentment there for sure.
Yeah, it definitely sucked. I mean, I did 90. My first year doing baseball at ESPN was 93. I started with them in 91 doing college hoops.
Yeah.
93 was great. Did Game of the Week with Larry Sorensen. I did, and I think 94 I did one or two with Mike Lansing. In fact, the game here in Seattle. I worked with Freddie Lynn. I mean, I had a great time. It was just tremendous. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I'm on my way. And then the strike happens. I'm like, dude, talk about bad timing.
Oh man, big time.
But, I had other things going on, thank goodness. I mean, I just finished the run at WFAN doing sports talk.
Right.
And I was doing was that the year? Yeah, I did. I started doing Westwood One NFL games part-time. And I also was doing Big East football. So I was lucky in that regard, I'll tell you.
Because, and looking back, I was doing my homework the last couple of days because I knew we were going to sit and chat today. But you've done a lot, man, and you've done it in a big market. Obviously in New York, you grew up in Philly. Was baseball, and you mentioned 94, was baseball what you set out, play-by-play baseball? Was that the goal for you? Was that like the end game saying, I want to be doing this is my thing, as opposed to hosting on radio and doing everything else you did?
Yeah, hosting on radio was great. I enjoyed it. But, I tell you what, let's see. I was at FAN from 89 to 93. So February 91, I started doing college basketball. And I remember doing a Rhode Island against Providence game and right up I-95 from New York. And I did the game. The excitement was off the chart. Yeah. And I come back, and now I sit in the studio, and Ed Coleman was a great partner. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't the same juice. I got to do games. I got to do play-by-play. Right. And, I mean, the juice in the building was just off the chart. I mean, local rivalry and everything. Yeah. And, real stuff happening in real time in front of you, not reacting to stuff. Yeah. I said, I got to do full-time play-by-play, and which I had sort of set my mind to back in high school. And baseball was, baseball and or the NFL. And I wound up doing both. So even back in high school, you're like, all right. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In high school, you'd love it. In my yearbook, they had, destination, hockey announcer, because I was a big hockey fan back in the day. And Gene Hart, the voice of the Flyers, was one of my heroes. I loved listening to him doing games. So that was something that I knew back in high school. Yeah.
Really? So, okay. So that's when you kind of got that bug where, and people always ask me, how do you get into baseball? Obviously coming from Australia, but there had to be someone you noticed or a couple people you noticed, like, I want to be like them. Basically.
Yeah. You know what happened? I was a pretty good baseball player in high school. I played 4-year letter in high school, captain, 2-time MVP. And I said, I went to a couple of tryouts when I was in high school. But somebody said, hey, listen, ain't no guarantee. You're good, but you ain't that good. And, if this doesn't happen, you can still be in sports. You could be in sports media. You could be a sports writer. You can be a broadcaster. So I had that in my mind, and then I just brought that up, to the top tier. Yeah. I said, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go for. And I had, growing up in Philly is a great sports town. I got to live in New York all these years. Yeah. And I was influenced by just a whole bunch of guys from distance. And I got to meet a lot of these guys along the way. And they've been very helpful over the years.
How do you feel like, and, going back to the early days, because I was at the winter meetings in December, and you've got, the main lobby where everyone sort of goes and, everyone's trying to act super cool or act like there's someone or whatever. Then you go down the street and you've got there's a convention center with just different job opportunities and stuff like that. I was heading out, and then just beyond that was the minor league hotel, and I was going to go down and meet up with some Rap Soda and some of these vendors and stuff like that. Yeah. But on the way, I was like, I'll sneak in here. I had credentials to go into this job fair, basically. Right. And I walk in, and a couple kids who they want to be broadcasters. They came up to me and said, "Oh, we're from the Northwest. We know who you are. Can we talk to you?" And it's crazy because I'm sitting there, and it kind of dawned on me how tough it is. Because there was 100 people, and a lot of them are there because they want to be broadcasters. And now you've got this saturation of what we're doing right now, a podcast, and everyone thinks they've got it down to a T. And we also live in this generation. You combine that with everyone wants everything next week. So, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy. But I walked out of that building, and I was just like, man, I'm lucky that I got to play. So I got a chance, because I got to play to get into broadcasting. But from your point of view, what do you think, going back, and if you can go back to those early days, what separated you from the pack to get doing some of the stuff you've done in your career, which is pretty remarkable in a massive, huge sports market on the East Coast? Yeah. And now being the play-by-play guy with the man, what separated you?
Well, I think I have unbridled enthusiasm, which I think you may have picked up when I do broadcast. Yeah. And I think that was one thing in my experience. Starting out as a newspaper guy, which was a tremendous foundation in terms of storytelling,
Gotcha.
in terms of interviewing skills and working under pressure. I've done a lot of stuff in college, a little small school, Bethany College in West Virginia. And I did radio there, and I did public address announcing. And I just think, and to be honest with you, diversity has not been a big thing in this country in terms of sports media.
Yeah.
It's not great now, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was when I broke in.
Yeah.
And let's face it, I was at the right place at the right time when some newspapers said, "Hey man, we got to get some black kids in here."
Right.
And I was there. I was there at the Philadelphia Inquirer. I got an internship. They asked me back the second year. I got to the New York Daily News when I was 22 years old. They threw me in the deep end. I swam out. Yeah. And then when the cable TV explosion happened in 80, 81, 82, Satellite News Channel was there, and I had an agent. We put together a tape, and they liked it, and I saw it, and that got me going. I didn't have to beat the bushes going down the podunk towns and whatnot in the Midwest and the South or anything like that. And I think the fact that, big city experience, I thrived in it. I did well in the biggest market, the Philly at the time was number 4 market, and, New York's number 1.
Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, I did talk radio. I had my talk show, WNBC, for like 3.5 years, 50,000 watts, clear channel, 40 states at night, FAN.
Yeah.
And, sports talk is a good methodology in terms of, again, taking advantage of storytelling, interviewing skills, and showing your personality. And then, I think all along in the back of my mind, I'd always do games in my head and practice and everything. And I got a shot, and I made the most of it.
Did you ever feel like one thing I run into is a situation where you have to sort of act like a pro? So like, sound like everyone else. And it's the worst thing I could do, really. Because, I mean, if I played 20 years in the big leagues, well, and you've said this to me a bunch. And there's 2 things you've said to me. You said, first of all, be yourself, right? And have that energy. Because I love having, that energy. And sometimes, okay, sound like a pro. Don't get too crazy with it. Another thing you said to me as well, I think this goes back to, storytelling and also networking. Get down in the clubhouse. That's the one thing I've stuck in my head. You get down in the clubhouse and ask from the players. It's made a massive difference because it just gives you that credibility when it's coming from them.
Absolutely. And I knew that as a newspaper guy. I learned that as an intern. And I'll never forget years ago, I think when Bill Parcells was with, forget who he was with, but he had this great line because he was battling with his GM. He says, they ought to let you shop for the groceries. And for me, I put it in terms of what I do. Shopping for the groceries is going down to the clubhouse, going to the batting cage, and you come up with information. You walk smack dab into like half of it. You pick up stuff. Yeah. And then, you put it into, you weave it into your broadcast, whether it be on radio or TV. So that's my approach. And I have to reach out to Bill and tell him that I use that line all the time. You got to shop for the groceries.
Yeah. It's a good one. Do you feel like players are more accessible now than back then? Because I felt like back in, especially the 90s, and I had coaches who played in the 90s, they're like, the media is the enemy. Don't talk to them. But do you feel like, is it easier now just getting to know these guys or
Yeah, it took a while years ago to build up trust, and you had to be around every day. And I know from at the Daily News, my newspaper days, if you're going to rip somebody, be there the next day, face to face.
Right.
That's key. And the same goes in broadcasting. Now I'm the home team announcer. I'm not going to rip anybody. It's like you had a bad game. What do you want me to do? I mean, they had a bad game. You gave up 6 runs, gave up 9 hits. His ERA's 15. I'm not lying. I mean, so you can't beef at me at that. Yeah. I didn't say, he sucked. He's a bad guy or anything. Yeah, I don't go there. But I think this generation has been raised so much on, instantaneous media. They like it. Social media. They want to be on it. And I think they're just more savvy in that it's a necessity. It's a part of the game.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. When because you started, my career started the same year you started with the Mariners, 2007. Yeah. And then 2009, I remember I got on Twitter. I was like one of the first. There's like 3 baseball players to be on Twitter. My teammates, and you remember some of these guys, Eric Bedard, Jared Washburn, they ripped me for. I was on Twitter like, get that thing off. And then literally turn around 12 months later. Not every player, but guys, it's just normal all of a sudden.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Hey, you're not hip and you're not with it if you're not on Twitter in some way, shape, or form. Now, you don't have to be out, just hammering people. But, I mean, I know when my wife told me, says, you should get on, branding's been a big word in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So we're our own brand. So you got,
Right.
You promote the Mariners. Hey, I'm gonna be here. We got this game. Hey, that was a great game last night. Great job by Felix. Yep, that kind of stuff. And that's that's what I try to do.
Some of these guys have got branding coaches now, or the
Unreal.
Mariners. The Mariners are helping them with their Instagram. It's amazing. It's so different to even you go back 10 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. And who was it? Misevich and Evan White, making their big league debuts, and our Mariner social media folks did a call with their families and a wish them well,
Right.
a vlog, if you will, and then they showed the guys watching it, and then they posted it. And actually, it was really good.
Right. It's a different time. Hey, and going back and you mentioned, with when you started off being African American, obviously having some diversity kind of gave you a foot in the door. There had to be some roadblocks along the way, right?
Yeah, there's some people you run across are real a-holes and everything, but you just deal with it, fight through it. And then I had one time a guy said something smart to me, checking in the media gate at a Phillies game at the Vet. And it was the night before I was going to write my first game story covering a Phillies game. It's going to be the lead story in the sports section the next day. I'm 22. What am I? 74. So I was 21 years old. Yeah, I was 21 years old. And I was with the late Bruce Kiden, who was a really good baseball writer in Philly. This guy said something smart to me. Some old timer. I let it go. Bruce was incensed. He crushed the guy. He crushed him in a letter to the Phillies management. And I got a huge attaboy from Bruce to my sports editor to my advisor, my advisor back in college.
Right.
Dave handled himself like a professional, didn't react. So I'll never forget that. So, and then the other one I always remember, I think it was another time I was down there. It might have been that same night because Bruce, once we got to the gate, Bruce said, hey, do this, you do this, So I go in the clubhouse and I see Steve Carlton. And I mean, it's Steve freaking Carlton. Come on, man.
Yeah.
And I go up and say, Steve, hey, Dave Simpson, the Inquirer. He turns around and gives me a look that would have killed 2 battalions.
Really?
And he says, yeah, what do you want? I said, I just wanted to say hello. I just wanted to ask you a couple things. And somebody said, dude, he's pitching tonight. I went,
yeah, right.
I didn't know. Nobody ever told me about that.
That's the rule.
Yeah, man. I never made that mistake again. I'll tell you that. 1974, boy.
You know what's funny about that though? The day I'm pitching, I was way more at ease, and because I get so nervous, I couldn't eat the day I was pitching. I would walk in the club and say, "Hey guys, how you doing?" Like this, just because I needed to talk to people. I need to be around people. That just made me. And everyone just got to put their head down because they didn't want to get in trouble. They're like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to talk to you," this and that. I got to a point when I was doing well, 2009. I said to Rick Griffin, he was in the clubhouse, and he said, "Hey man, look, like, you got to start focusing." And I said, "Mate, I do better when I'm talking to people." So it got to a point where Rick's like, "Okay, who do you want me to bring out in the dugout just to chat to you?" And I was like, "Oh, this is great." So just be some random person just chatting. But that was the golden rule, man. You do not talk to starting pitchers, especially Steve Carlton.
Oh man, I tell you what, he turned around, man. So what's funny? Later on so that was 1974. So 2000, he's retired. He's in the Hall of Fame. I'm now hosting the Phillies Sunday pregame show, and I'm doing an in-game interview. And Harry, the great Harry Callis said, let's throw it down to Dave Sims with a special guest. And Harry, thank you. I'm with Lefty. Steve Carlton, he's a guy that, boy, he put the hammer on me when I was an intern back in the day. Steve, good to see you again. How are you? He looked at me like, the hell are you talking about?
Did you try and explain what you were talking about? Why you would, or you just afterwards you just say, "Hey, listen, I was referring to this story."
Yeah. After, but he looked at me like, "Really?"
Yeah.
I probably should have been fair and told him I'll bust your balls right out of the game, but I didn't. But
that's funny.
I felt good doing it. I ain't gonna lie to you.
So when you were young, going back to that time with Steve Carlton, were there times where you felt you were worried about saying something or doing something that is going to piss your boss off and you're going to lose your job, so you had to simmer down? Or
well, I was just flat out scared to death. I mean, it's like, be careful what you wish for, and I actually got it.
Yeah.
I'll never get, my advisor said, well, we had this one kid got an internship in Philadelphia Inquirer. I said, I'm from Philly. How about it? So I went, got the interview, made it, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now it's June 4th, 1973. And I'm in there, and I was like, and the good part was that was in my hometown. I at least knew where everything was. I was living with my parents. So But boy, I tell you what, I look back on it. It was just it was a whole new world, man. It really was. And there was no room to be cocky or anything. That's for damn sure.
Well, that's one thing. It's kind of that healthy balance. For me, it's like, okay, you have to act like one of the guys, right? You have to act like a professional because you don't want to step on toes or you don't want to, piss your boss off. But then you sort of look out and you see guys who are just killing it, and they're acting like insane. Like Eric Burns, perfect example. He's a nutcase. And it's like, if I ever, not that I'm his same personality, but if I ever acted like, getting a piece of cardboard flying down a hill, people are like, dude, we're never going to have you on again if you do that. But
he's one
like,
he
is. But it works. It's like he's got that basically just doesn't care what anyone thinks, like trait that is so hard to have.
Yeah, he has a love for life, and I applaud him for it. I mean, I don't know if I know for over the last few years watching him on MLB Network, and I've been on with him on MLB Now and MLB Network and a couple of shows. His enthusiasm, his energy, and he studies now. I tell you what, he knows what he's talking about. Right. He does his homework. He comes in, having played too. He had 3 or 4 really good years. There's some credibility there. Yeah. I like Birdsey. I know a lot of people. He rubs people the wrong way.
But I think he's great. Yeah.
And like same with Bill Walton. I mean, I love his zest for life, man. The fact that he's just enthusiastic. He's excited about being where he is and talking about the subject matter. I think that's gold. I really do.
Yeah, I had Eric Burns on this podcast, and I had to have we were on for an hour. I had to have a nap afterwards. I was having the whole thing to it's so funny. I'm used to, we're sitting down like this talking. Well, of course, there's no seat there. He's like, and he kept moving away from his microphone too. Like,
I bet, yeah.
He
makes coffee nervous.
Oh, exactly. And mind you, he had a huge venti, coffee in his hand the whole time. Like, dude, you do not need that. Put that thing down. But he's jumping around. He's doing and I'm like, man, he's about to start doing backflips. It was nuts. It was a blast. Yeah. But that's just him. But it's one of these the skill of just not caring what people think, I think, is the big thing to get over.
Well, I tell you what, if you're going to be in this business, you have to be ready to take the slings and arrows and the good times and the bad times. And then you got to be able, just like a ball player, you got to bounce back. You're not going to be perfect all the time. I mean, there's sometimes I've smacked myself in the face. I'm like, what the heck? Why did I say it? Why did I say it like that? Think before you speak. Enunciate. Your vocabulary is good. Right. Use it. What are you doing? Yeah. I mean, a lot of times I'm up there like, oh my God, come on. And there's other times, man, you're feeling good and you're just rolling, and it's just things are flowing, and you're throwing references out, and you're throwing comparisons out, and they all hit. And then you go home, and then you hear from some of your boys, and like, dude, you were on fire last night, man. I love it. It was good stuff, man. Good.
Right.
It's and being I tell you what, for me, I didn't play at the highest level like you, but being a jock all my life and playing, playing high school football, baseball, basketball, playing Legion baseball, playing college football, college baseball. I think that is a really good edge for me.
Yeah, because
I can empathize and I understand. So again, not on your level, but I understand. Yeah. I know the success and the failure that you guys go through in baseball. I've been there, I've done that, and I can relate. So I'm not like some of these guys that do talk radio and they're just shock jocks and kill jockeys and they just want to crush people. Yeah, that's never been my deal.
Have you ever said anything, on air, whether it's obviously you've been covering the Mariners now for what's it been, 13 years?
14 years. 14 years.
Sorry, my maths. I should know that because
I'm not good either, buddy. I know that. Yeah.
But has there ever been a time? Obviously, because you basically you're working for the team. You basically you support. No. Has there ever been a time where you've said something and a player's approached you or a team has approached you and said, "Hey, that was just what you said was not right," and it was extremely hostile?
The only, honest to God, this is difficult to believe, and it's a great question. And when I think back, it's hard to believe it's only one time. Remember the big Canadian kid we had? Matter of fact, yeah, because you were here. Chris something. He threw hard. He
Rietzma.
was
Chris Rietzma?
Rietzma. Loved Rietzma. I loved watching him pitch when he was healthy.
Yeah.
Big, strong right-hander. So one time, and then remember he came down with his shoulder, right?
Yep.
The shoulder and elbow. So one time, I guess this got to be 07, because Richie Sexton was there. And he had a bad game. I mean, he just got lit up.
Yeah.
And I threw it to break, and I turned to Mike, or turned to the stage man, Robbie. I said, damn, that really sucks. What the hell's wrong with him? Well, it turned out Richie was in the clubhouse.
Oh, man.
And they were getting a raw feed, and the guy in the truck hadn't taken the audio down, so we heard it. So, like, the next day, I'm in the clubhouse. Richie goes, hey, Big Sims, better watch what you say about the fellas, man. That was the only time.
This is Richie.
Yeah, Richie said that. Richie never said anything to me. But Richie heard it. Richie was, hey, Big Sims, you better watch what you say, man. I was like, hey. I don't remember what my response was. I might have told Ricky to, later for you, but I don't, I show up every day. You know that. You see me in the clubhouse every day. If anybody's got a beef, bring it.
Right. And you have to be that way, right? Because if you go, if you basically say something, then you go high. Yeah, it's funny. And Richie Sexton, I was on his team back then. I mean, he was out for blood. He was not doing well. The media was the enemy. He was one of those veteran guys who was like, oh, don't, stop talking to the media, this and that. He'd go, he'd go shower and put his clothes in the bathroom to avoid reporters after a game. So any instance, you may have said, oh man, Chris Reitz, you could have said the smallest thing, and he was on it right away. So
yeah, I mean, I didn't cuss him or anything. I just said something, he really, I might have said he sucked today, or boy, he didn't have it, or something like that, and he heard it. But that's not knock wood. That's the only, since I've been here, that's the only time that's happened. Yeah.
Do you feel like, is it a rush for you? Like, do you still have that when it's like, you mentioned before a couple minutes ago, you mentioned where you're just rolling and you're just killing it. Then you get that feedback from your friends or your family. Does it still feel like that rush? I feel like for me, look, I played Major League Baseball, and there's a little bit of a different kind of rush and that feeling of, man, I just nailed that. I get that too. I'm not going to lie, man. I mean, especially my first time doing pre and post, I was floating in the car driving away. I was on for 5 minutes, for free. Like I was just doing like a pregame that probably, who knows who's watching, I don't know. But I felt like, man, do you still feel that? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. I know, like tonight we're on at 4:10.
Yeah.
So like in my head, I've already started my lineups and all that.
Right.
And I got to do a couple things beforehand. Like about an hour before the game, I get that, that little rumble in the stomach, a little bit of excitement, a little nervous energy. I've done thousands of games, football, baseball, basketball. Yeah. And when we sit down, I can feel the surge coming. I don't have to inject anything. I feel it, and it just starts to build. And, you want to come on the air and you want to be friendly. You want to be welcoming. You want to be authoritative. And they're like, hi, everybody, welcome to Mariners Baseball. You want to be, and I feel that. And when I can't remember the last time I didn't feel that little thing in my stomach where, a little bit nervous, a touch of apprehension mixed in with hey, man, where else would I rather be?
Right. Gotcha.
And if you get that every day, and it's one of the reasons why I've been able to last this long. I think somebody wrote me the other day, or I did a show with somebody and said, how do you maintain your enthusiasm? I said, I was born with it. I was taught it, and I enjoy it. And it's real.
Do you, even with 162 games? I mean, in the middle of August.
You know how many guys would give a body part to do what I do?
Well, that's
motivation in itself.
That's where I'm heading, because last year I got a chance to do a game with you, and I was so excited. And I get the off chance to get in there and do 1 through 9, and I love it, man. I mean, it's. I leave afterwards. I'm like, man, that was just such a rush. It's what I want to do. But I walk in.
Did a hell of a job too.
Right. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. It's always a pleasure working with you. But I'm driving to the stadium. I'm like, okay, I want to have this energy. I'm all excited. I'm thinking to myself, okay, Dave's been doing this for 120 games already. Okay, just simmer down when they get in there. Act like a pro. But you walked in and straight away you were like, you were buzzing. And I feel like, I'm thinking back, it's like every time you walk in, you still have that same energy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I walk in, I'll walk in today, and Robbie, our stage manager, and Earl's the sound guy. Hey, boys, what's up? How we doing? Come in, clapping hands like a third base coach. It's like,
right.
You always have coaches who are chat guys, who are, energy guys. Come on, boys. Come on, Ryan. Hey, you got him, kid. Come on up. Hey, that kind of thing. I used to talk it up all the time. I mean, and my old man was like that. He was an absolute pisser and just a badass. Child of the Depression, World War II veteran. I mean, a badass, but a good guy and a tough guy. I mean, that's what I learned from, man.
Yeah. Hey, and also too, and we're in a crazy time right now with everything that happened with George Floyd, and all of a sudden just outrage across the country.
Right.
Has there been, especially being obviously in your position where you do have a voice, right? You can speak up. Has there ever been a time in your career where it's matched this or been?
No way.
Really?
No. I mean, I'm sitting here, answering questions or talking about, judicial reform, police reform, various and sundry kinds of racism, and how we got to, get the country, on the right track. Country, it's a great country. It's not perfect. The reason we scream is because we love it so much. We want it to be better, and we know it can be better. And as I always say, black folks have been talking about this kind of treatment, I don't know, since 1619, after the first slave ships were brought here,
Yeah.
And it took somebody to stand there and videotape 8 minutes and 46 seconds of a man being killed to get the whole world, pretty much the whole world, fired up. I mean, down in Portland, they're demonstrating every night. They're doing stuff here in Seattle. I mean, it's just implicit racism, explicit racism.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people got to go to school, and I agree with somebody I heard say, if you don't have a black friend, go get one and talk to him. And ask some questions, and so you get an idea. With empathy. The guy in the White House has no empathy, but that doesn't preclude anybody else from enhancing their own or finding their own strength of it.
Do you feel like players now, and I mean players again, and is it because they feel more comfortable? Because let's talk about the Mariners, for example. The Mariners have been extremely supportive, and I had Braden Bishop on here a couple of weeks ago, and I'm looking on Twitter, and these guys are just flat out just speaking up. There had to be times, though, and you must have covered this, but you go back to the even the 90s or early 2000s, players like, I feel this way, but I can't speak up because my job's in jeopardy, right?
Well, that's when we had the roundtable, that's what Dee Gordon and those guys said, and they said that changes now, as you've seen on social media. Back in the day when I was a kid, there's a great picture when Muhammad Ali was refusing to go in the army, military service, and they had all these elite black athletes and politicians. You had Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell. You had Bobby Mitchell. You had Carl Stokes, who was the mayor of Cleveland. It's an iconic picture. I want to say 67. And then you had Tommy Smith and John Carlos in the 68 Olympics in Mexico City, I think it was. Those were iconic moments in terms of fighting racial strife as it regards to athletes. But now has probably been, certainly in my lifetime, the greatest forum and the greatest opportunity for guys to speak out, and they're doing it. The NBA, the NFL, and the other thing too that gladdens my heart, you mentioned it. The Mariners, we got 10 black guys, 10 African Americans on our ball club, which is by far the most of anybody in Major League Baseball. Last year was only 68 African Americans. Among what? How many players do we have? We got a little over 1,000 players, counting everybody on the DL and everything.
Well, it makes
that's extraordinary.
It makes up basically only 7% of the league, right? Why is that? Like in your opinion, covering sports, and you played sport, you're an athlete. Why do you think baseball is just not popular in your opinion?
I always say that I'm part of the last generation of black Americans who really give a damn about baseball. Because when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, that was the sport. I mean, it wasn't even close. And it was every playground in Philly where I grew up, and in most major cities, guys were playing baseball or softball or something like that. And the high school teams had a lot of, historically black schools had black guys playing baseball. But it's the ultimate father-son hand-me-down sport. And given, the sociological exercise, I mean, I'm not one, but I do know that, black men heading households, the numbers are down significantly from a couple of generations ago. Jackie Robinson and his generation created a lot of excitement in the 50s and 60s. You also had the Negro Leagues, then that faded out, and then most of those guys, and their legacy was there, and then kids, guys came in. It's just that I don't think we don't market it enough. We don't go against basketball, football, show the coolness factor of baseball, which, you and I know. I mean, it's just such a great game. It teaches you so much. And, you got to persevere. So I just think that's the biggest thing. Some of the issues involved in it. But we're getting killed by football and baseball, but basketball. But, right now, hopefully we can have a good 60 games here, get through it. Playoffs will be exciting as heck. Maybe this will start a new trend.
It's funny, and not that it runs parallel, but people always ask me why participation back in Australia for kids overall is down for baseball. Well, they're competing for against rugby and cricket. And the one thing I talked to Trent Olchin, who I work with, I'm like, I want to go into schools and just bring up the cool factor for baseball, as opposed to cricket is not cool. It's so boring. Like cricket, and half my listeners are from Australia, right? So they're going to probably blast me for this. I don't care. But I want to go and say, all right, all these kids, they're good athletes who are playing cricket. I need to show them that there's that cool factor. Because, and this is another thing, and I nearly forgot to bring it up. I'm halfway through watching it again, The Last Dance, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So this is what's crazy. I grew up in Australia. I didn't play basketball, but I love basketball. I knew all the names because of Michael Jordan, basically. And then Shaquille O'Neal came in, and these were icons. And I'm looking at them going, man. And even the Gatorade commercial was on in Australia. It was crazy. And I'm thinking, I didn't even play basketball. I knew all these guys. I'm watching them play the Knicks, and Amanda's like, oh, who's that little guy who's always a pest? Oh, and it's Starks, right? Yeah. And I'm like, how do I remember that? That's crazy, because it just transcended the game. And okay, I got a question for you. A couple of things. One, there's an episode, and the first time I watched this about a month ago. I paused it. I said, I've got to ask Dave this. When Michael Jordan, and because you were around when there was a politician in North Carolina. What was his name? I'm drawing a blank.
Jesse Helms.
That's right. So there was a big thing how Michael Jordan didn't, support him or anything like that.
No, it was Harvey Gantt, who was a black guy.
Harvey Gantt. That's right.
Against Jesse Helms, who's a known segregation.
That's right. Harvey Gantt. That's it.
Right.
So, and obviously it's easy to, in hindsight, to look back at this, and, I know who's editing this, this documentary or whatever, but going back, and you were involved, you're obviously covering sport. Did you look at that and say, well, Michael Jordan should have stepped in and done something?
Well, especially since the guy was an art segregationist and just, he was not good for the black community. And Michael's approach was, well, Republicans buy sneakers too. Right. I was like, swing and a miss, dude. Not even. Come on, now. You're better than that. And I think if that circumstance existed now,
completely different.
Nobody in their right mind would say that now.
So even back then. So and again, that's what I'm talking about. So right now we're watching this documentary in 2020. So you look back and it's a little bit more polarizing. But as from your position and your background, so you're looking at that at the time, you were looking at that saying, all right, Michael, come on, man, step up and do something.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he had the platform. He, at that time he was, I think, arguably, if not definitely the most popular athlete in the world, and certainly in the top three. If you can, well, say in the country. And in the world too. I mean, we talk about soccer players and all that kind of stuff. And an opportunity, as a front-facing, black icon, and a chance to fight against segregation, that should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, right.
And my wife is still hacked off in it.
It's funny because in the documentary, and this is my point, it's kind of like they showed it, covered it, and then moved on.
Right. Well, it was obviously that. The producer and the director, they did a marvelous job.
Yeah.
But obviously,
they did.
Really, I don't know, a little slanted, all in Michael's favor.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably could have had a lot of stuff in there, other things that were going on. But all in all, I thought it was really well done.
And around that time, and you were covering basketball, and you're a host covering the Knicks, right? Around roughly when
the Knicks pre and post on radio. Yeah.
So how was it? I want to ask three guys. Now, first of all, Michael Jordan, covering him. How was he with the media back then?
Decent. I didn't have to really deal with him that much. I used to have the best seat in the world. I sat, this was back in the days when the media was at courtside at NBA games, and I had the seat right next to the visiting team bench. Usually it'd be the trainer, then the head coach. So I got to hear and see everything. And it was amazing. And
that's awesome.
To watch the ferocity and the intensity of Michael Jordan, all the great players that came through the NBA during those years. I did that gig from like 86 to 93, 94, something like that.
Right.
And it was impressive, man. And every night I remember sitting next to a guy from Newsday, Curtis Bunn. And when Michael, we would always be fired up, saying, we're going to see something good tonight, with Mike. And sure enough, almost every time he'd come in 2-3 times a year, it was a treat. It was a treat. But I mean, then we were seeing Kareem and Karl Malone, Barkley, and all these guys. I mean, and the NBA was, and the Knicks were good. Yeah, they were at 90. Well, it was at 94. Yeah, 94 they were in the championship. That year. Yeah.
And then okay, so you look at him, and then Scottie Pippen. I'm still trying to get a gauge on what he was like personality-wise. It's tough to tell from this documentary, and he always seemed like a quiet, sort of like a sidekick to Michael. I mean,
it was the best sidekick ever, man.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. Yeah,
the best. I had one interaction with Scotty. One time I was, it might have been the next year, and I was in Philly. I was at a hotel, and I checked in, and the Bulls were playing the Sixers, I guess, the next afternoon. So they were in the same hotel, and I see him in the lobby. Yo, man, how you doing? Hey, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. So then I get up to my room. As I'm walking to my room, I guess he'd gone up before me. And as I turn and I come down the hall, as you make the turn, you're going down the hallway. Of course, now my room's all the way down the other end. And then after I pass his room, and then I hear these girls, like 3 girls got in. Somebody, Scotty, knocking on the door. I'd never seen that before. You'd always hear about that. He didn't answer the door. Somehow these 3 women, they must have been just, groupies, and they got in. And it just tickled me so much. Just like, oh, my God, it must be like this every night. I mean, These guys are the Beatles and the Stones combined, and, Michael Jackson combined, rolled into one of the Bulls of that era. That was amazing.
But they lived in, and my next person I wanted to ask you real quickly about Dennis Rodman. These guys played in a time where there weren't iPhone cameras up every 2 seconds. There wasn't Twitter, boom, 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 real time.
Lucky for them, they weren't.
Right.
Because the stories that have been told over the years, passed down, by word of mouth, a lot of that would have been documented one way or another, either audio or visually with iPhones. And that's why, if you're an athlete now, you got to really pick your spots, man. You got to be careful. And that kid, who was it? The kid with, was it Lou Williams with the Clippers? He got an excused absence. Then he goes to a gentleman's club, and he gets a picture taken. Some rapper takes a picture of him, and it's like, dude, really? Come on, man.
And yeah, it's all over the place. It's like Dennis Rodman. I'd love to see. I know he did the 30 for 30, but I'd love to see like an 8-part series on him and dive into the movies, because who knows?
It wouldn't be suitable for TV. I tell you that.
That's just it. I mean, if Dennis Rodman was playing in this era, first of all, some of the things he did with the hair and everything would seem normal because it's a little bit more, whatever. But then when you dive into what he's doing, I mean, the fact that they let him go to Vegas and he just didn't show up for.
But you know what the thing was? They knew how to play his buttons.
Right.
And he's like one of the 10 million that would ask for something like that. And he's the only guy you would grant that to.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
just so different. The thing that, there's a lot of weird stuff that he does, but his play on the court, his unselfishness, he knows he's not a scorer, but he knows he can rebound. Right. He knows he can block shots. Yeah. He knows he can pass, and he can set picks. That ain't bad.
Yeah.
That's the full treatment, and he deserves his spot in the Hall of Fame. He really does.
Yeah. He was so fun to watch, man. And again, he's just like still, even with him, and as much as we know about him, there's still like that element of, man, I'd just like to know more about what he got up to or inside that head. Hey, real quick, and I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got to get out of here in a second. And looking at your career, obviously radio, TV, and you had to deal with, you mentioned 94, where you felt like you're on somewhere where you felt like all of a sudden you had a place, ESPN. You joined the Mariners, and now it's been 13 years in the same spot where you go to the same building every single day. You're not sort of doing this and then jumping onto that next opportunity. First of all, how did the Mariners come about?
Well, I had the baseball experience. I did 93, 94 ESPN. Then I did a couple of games in 04, 05, just 1 or 2 here and there.
Yeah.
And I had made contact with Kevin Martinez, who you know.
Yeah.
And it turned out Kevin had gone to school with my brother-in-law at Syracuse, late 80s, while I'm at WNBC. And they're working a radio station. Hey, can you do some liners for me? So I do some liners for him, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
And then I came to Seattle and did a couple of games when he was working here. And I said, hey, if anything ever happens here, here's my number. So long story short, right after Halloween '06, I get a call from my brother-in-law. Says, Kevin says, Ron Fairley's leaving the ball club, and you may want to put in. I said, get out of here. Right. Ron Fairley was doing color. So then I get a call a couple of days later, and Kevin says, hey, I got your name and my name on the line here, pal. What are you doing? Send me a tape.
Right.
So I sent him a tape, and they brought me in for an interview, and I beat like 100, beat out 100 guys.
Wow.
Guys who had and a lot of guys who had more experience, longer, had done a lot more games than I'd done, baseball-wise. But, at that time, I was doing NFL every week. I was doing college football, college basketball. I was doing all kinds of stuff. And, I'm a broadcaster. And I got the job, and, I've been, thankful and happy to be here. I mean, I love what I do.
So you even going into that situation, you still have to send the tape in. They still have to watch it. You still have to nail it in the interview. It's not something where you just roll in and say, "Yeah, I'm available." Oh, wow, look at your history. Boom.
Well, yeah, to that point, I was lucky. One of the games, I think in 04, 05, I did a Mariner game. I remember Brett Boone hit a home run straightaway center field. It was amazing. That my agent at the time had that tape and made that a part of the presentation.
Oh, nice.
And I'll never forget this one woman who was on the search committee said, he was the only one that had a Seattle Mariner tape. Well, it's like total serendipity, and it worked out really well. I mean, it's been good. I've enjoyed my run here. I really have.
So, and you enjoy covering the same team every single day?
Yeah, it's better because I had the experience of doing, as Gary Cohen of the Mets said, hey, you no longer have to parachute in and out of games. You got your team. It's a constant. You know everybody. They know you. They're comfortable with you. The fans will get comfortable with you, and you with them, as opposed to – and there's nothing wrong with this, but, when you're doing ESPN, all right, I'm going to be in Chicago next week. I got the Cubs and the Brewers. Next week I got to go to L.A. And, I have a better feel when I'm doing it. The continuity is tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Mike Trout. I know all the guys in the American League. Hey, man, how are you? Go up and get a couple minutes with them.
Right.
So I like this a lot. I really do.
Yeah.
I really do.
Do you okay? So just going back to that, I'm going back to that winter meetings in the convention center. You've got 30 wannabe Dave Sims in front of you, right? 20-year-old kids. What are some things you tell them? What are the big keys? If I'm a young broadcaster, and I want to hear from one of the best, what do you tell them?
Well, I always tell them the golden rule is always in effect. You got to be able to work with it in a team environment. I always tell the younger kids, if you're still in high school or college, get involved with theater.
Okay.
Because that would, in terms of self-confidence, being out in front of a crowd, and even if you were just raising a curtain, you're around people who do that, and by osmosis, you can pick up a lot of great information. If you're in college, go to your theater department and ask to partake in breathing exercises, voice lessons, that kind of stuff. And then if you want to be a sports broadcaster, I take it you already know the game, know the rules, and be able to put learn how to put the end of a game together, know how to do an open, know how to work in your partner, know how to to take throws, and then now with technology, with iPads, iPhones, and all that kind of stuff, you have implements that you can practice. You can practice like for hours at a time, and you can play it back. You can be, and you're going to be your own toughest judge. Right. And then the other thing, you look at people who are successful in the business and what makes them successful. What do you like about what they do? What don't you like? You take a little here, take a little there. But the main thing is you got to be yourself. Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, I mentioned earlier, when I was a writer, I can remember even I called him 2 weeks ago. Vern Lundquist just had his 80th birthday, and I told him I had his number because I'd always see him during the NCAA tournament and when he was covering some other stuff. Anyway, I said, you were always good to me. You're always answering my couple, 3 questions, and a lot of broadcasters. And that's why it's incumbent upon me, when young kids write or ask for critique of tape, if I don't have time then, I eventually get to it and do it. But, in terms of advice, just be a good person. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. And just be ready to work your ass off, and you're going to get rejections. And you know what? You mourn for 5 minutes and then you move on. Right. Did you work on your voice? That's some voice lessons with matter of fact, I did some in college. And then when I got my WNBC job, I didn't feel comfortable, and I wanted to know where I felt. And they hooked me up with a woman who was a voice teacher who had worked with Broadway people. I remember going up to her apartment on the Upper West Side in the, like, 80s. So you know Manhattan. So Upper West Side in the 80s somewhere. And we would do these crazy exercises, but they work. And it was –
I was going to ask because my wife, actress, she's like, you got to work on your voice. She goes, I can tell when you're nervous because you start, and all these crazy exercises. I'm sitting there like, if anyone's out the window is watching me.
They work. They work.
They just
the biggest thing, you got to sit up straight all the time.
Right.
And then that way you get the whole flow, from top to bottom and back. It's a beautiful thing, man.
Right. Awesome, Dave. This has been fun. I could keep you for 2 hours, but I know you got a game to get to. But this has been a blast, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, Ryan. All the best. Keep up the good work, man.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Dave. How are we doing, guys? Hope you enjoyed that episode with Dave Sims. Now, remember to click subscribe. I've got some insane guests coming up, all walks of life. Can't wait to bring them on. So make sure you click subscribe. Go to YouTube. I'm going to put all this stuff up on YouTube. I'm slowly getting that going, but I hope you enjoyed it. And also, too, send me a message. You can click the contact page or the get in touch page, on the website, www.thetopstep.com. Go over there, shoot me an email. So give me some feedback. Tell me who you want to hear from, and I'll make it happen. But glad you enjoyed that episode. We'll be back next Monday. Enjoy that baseball, and there's no fans. Stay masked up, masked keep that mask on. All right, guys. We'll see you, mates. We'll see you next week.
Killing them.